G'day guys, Mackie with the Outer Circle, and today I want to do a different video. The topic on hand's a bit of a funny one because it's not one that people generally will talk about, and that is what it's like to be someone who lives on the fringe of the hobby. And I'm not talking about people who are radical feminists or that kind of thing. I'm actually talking about people who live quite removed from other hobbyists, whether it be financially, because they just can't afford the armies the people in their area play, or perhaps they live a very long distance away. Maybe there's just simply no gaming stores in their area. Who knows? But here at the Outer Circle, we like to talk about a lot of different issues, and frankly, there's only so many times you can talk about Games Workshop's pricing or Matt Ward existing. This is a real issue. There are no quick solutions to it, no quick answers. So what I've done is I've invited friend Colin on the show, who's been on here a couple of times before, just to talk about his experiences, because he's someone who lives in a remote area. So Colin, say hi to the audience.
Hey guys.
And yeah, so I sent you a series of questions, nothing like big, there weren't any long-winded questions or anything like that, just a general set of talking points like, how'd you get into the hobby, what your local gaming experience is like, that kind of thing. So would you like to talk about that now?
Yeah, sure. How I got into the hobby. This was back in third. My group and I were originally a group of role players. We played D&D, if anyone knows that. Of course, everyone knows D&D. We played Rifts. We played World of Darkness. And that is a pen and paper role-playing game. Many might know it from... There was a live action one, I think, going around. And one of the writers for that system was our friend Adam Dembski-Bowden. What we did there is one of the guys got into 40k. He was a bit of an artist type. What he wanted is, because he used to look at the magazines and the White Dwarfs back in the day when they were good, he wanted a Chaos Army. And so a couple of guys followed along. And me, for some reason, I walked into I think it was called the Smith Family thrift shop we have here in Australia. And I picked up a 40k novel. It was called, I believe, Black Sky, Dead Sun. And I think Kat's mentioned it on the show. One of the old...
Possibly, yeah. I think it's from the range of hobby merchandise we sent him to recover, along with like Clear Bases and Age of Sigmar minis.
Oh. Yeah, and that was about one of the Ultramarine series by Graham McNeil, and it was about Uriel Ventress, the world's famous Ultramarine. Because he broke the Codex Astartes, gets sent into the Eye of Terror on a ship, and his ship gets captured, and he gets taken to, and I'm sure many of our listeners will know this story, know the novel. He gets sent into the Iron Warrior, gets stranded with his mate on the Iron Warrior's home planet. And as I started reading it, I started getting into the grim dark, and I started thinking, well, hey, I want to get into this. So I went upstairs, because, like I said, we were fairly isolated, and we had no one around to teach us. And we started learning the game ourselves, outside of Games Workshop, outside of everything. So I mentioned, hey, I want to play 40k with you guys. So next thing you know, I've got a USB full of all these PDF books. The rule book, everything. So I'm sure Games Workshop loved that.
Yeah, no, go on.
Yep. And so I got myself into the army, and we started playing. But the thing is, we were learning together, and there was absolutely no kinds of standards there. So anything went. I mean, in 30k, there's very high standards. This was the opposite end of that. I mean, a lot of guys were using D&D miniatures as proxies. I saw one guy use an army full of bases, if you can believe that. Nothing on them, just the black bases.
I can definitely believe that. I remember what it was like when I myself started out and what my social circle was like. Lots of proxies, unpainted stuff, cavalry models from fantasy being used as like 40k Terminators, all sorts of things, just so people could play test and get an idea for how things worked.
And that was very positive for me, because we got to do it, but there was no fluff background. And I think it was me, I was the only one who actually read the novels, and that progressed as a very small group over a number of years. But
so you would say more that people were in it for... There's sort of three general things people are in it for. Now, people can be into all three, but I'd say roughly they are the game itself, the backstory to the game, and painting the miniatures. I think that's the three core tenets that people sort of are into the hobby for. Now, obviously, people can be into all three of those things at once, but from the sound of it, you were more driven by the fluff of the time as opposed to the game.
That's correct, yeah. And the rest of the guys were more driven by the hobby aspects, and one particular guy was more interested in the competitive gaming aspects of it. But and yeah.
So that's your sort of introduction to Games Workshop and the hobby. What was it like trying to actually find those games? Like, obviously you had your social circle, but was there any sort of way of like finding people or meeting people outside the circle? How did you find out about like the larger hobby community?
Well, what happened is I went to Armidale, I went to uni, and I found a small group in Armidale, and I met this one dude who was very into the hobby aspects, and we'd play a few games with him. There was with him up there, this guy Jack from Armidale, and there was a little group in Armidale itself, which was a big difference from my local group, because one of the things I think is important in the hobby is you get out and try different groups. You don't stick to your one group, because you'll learn more if you get into the outside world. I'll bet my exposure at that time was very limited, but it was an eye opener. I can remember I was up there, and do you remember back in when the Baneblade came out?
The original Forge World one, like the armor cast type one, or the plastic?
The plastic one.
Yes.
Well, that was one of the experiences I decided to do. I actually bought one of the. I've still got the Baneblade here, and when I took it to where was it? I took it to Goldman and started bringing this Baneblade in. The reaction I got was quite funny, because the guys there, as soon as they saw this Baneblade, it was like, ooh, horror. Oh, it's not Core Games Workshop. I don't want to play this. It's Forge World. And I discovered an old Imperial Armour 1 was using those rules, which were weird. You know, with the escape hatch and whatever.
Yeah, back when it was very narrative-driven rules, we'll say.
Yeah, and so everyone that was using these modern rules, I was using these ancient rules out of this old PDF. And, so I decided to name this Baneblade, and this name, Thunderchild, and it died. Orcs killed it. Geneskillers killed it multiple times. And, because my army at the time was I had infantry-driven armies. I didn't have any tanks. And this is my real tank. Yay! And then it was like, it keeps dying. I keep losing. But mind you, I was never one of these guys who'd be hyper-competitive, and I generally lose like 99% of the time. But, that never bothered me.
No, fair enough. So, alright, so moving onto your actual area, I guess, where you're living now. So, for the people who don't know, you actually live in Goulburn, correct?
Yep.
And that's actually quite some distance. Hopefully I have a lovely graphic up in the video at the moment showing on a map how far away that is from anywhere important.
It's very close.
Not that Sydney's important. It's kind of a hole, and Canberra, Kim Jong-il, my man, if you're listening, go for Canberra. Yes, so Wollongong, Goulburn, that kind of thing. Goulburn itself, talk about that.
Goulburn is a weird sort of place. It's very, very easy to get to. It's like Tatooine, but no one particularly wants to get there.
That sounds right.
It's famous for the New South Wales Police Academy, Goulburn Jail where all the terrorists are kept, and a big sheep.
The big merino.
Yeah. Biggest sheep in the world.
Yes, took my missus there when we were driving through. That was the only reason we stopped off in Goulburn was I think there's a Macca's right next door. She wanted some chicken nuggets.
That's actually the better. There's actually two. There's one at the north end, but that's actually the better McDonald's. That's actually the better one.
There you go. So, all right. So, Goulburn itself, as we just joked, it's actually not near anything. So, what does that actually mean for your hobby?
For my hobby, I was speaking to someone about this a few weeks ago, and I said, "Look, if I want to, since we're discussing 30k, if I want to go to a 30k game, I've got to go to 3D6 in Canberra, which is a very cool place, and I'd encourage anyone to go there. It's got a cool bar, the Loaded Dice Bar, and I think you were saying something. It had some very Man of War rules in there.
Yeah, well, there's a whole bunch, for those who haven't been there before, just a quick sidetrack. Um, it's actually full of old board games and box games and that kind of thing. You can just pull them off the shelf and play and have a beer and have a good feed with your mates. It's real nice atmosphere. But yeah, so that's the closest you have. Do you have any local gaming stores at all in Goulburn?
No, it's funny. We've got EB Games, which is obviously not what you want, but we have a toy world.
Sorry, for those who listen overseas, EB Games is kind of like GameStop, that kind of thing. They just sell computer games and video game merchandise. So I just thought I'd add that because obviously people listening, you're not all going to know Australian terms and stores. Maybe EB Games are bigger than I know, but yeah.
Well, yeah, and you've got a toy world. That generally used to stock Games Workshop about years and years and years ago, I think they did, but I think they got Jack at Games Workshop and got rid of them. Funny thing happened, the same thing happened in Armidale. They got sick of Games Workshop and ditched them too. I think I'm seeing a trend here.
Well, funny enough, there was one of the stores I went to growing up was in Greensborough, and they had down in Melbourne here. They had a Games Workshop for years and years and years. It was one of the first ones they put in Australia, and when they closed, the only store that sold them was like a little Mind Games or something downstairs.
Yeah.
And I'd go in there after school, and because I couldn't get my GW fix, my school bus is my local shopping mall, and the one they moved to was quite some distance away. So the only way to get a sort of GW fix and buy new minis without getting my mum to drive me across town was to go into this like little Mind Games and dig around the back shelves and find like the 5 boxes they had at the back. And yeah, I'm assuming that that's something similar like what your experiences were.
Oh, very similar actually. That was with the old toy world. But what I used to do is me and a mate. One of the things places we used to go was if mil sims, military simulations.
Yes.
We all used to go through there, and now they would offer a discount of I think it was 20, if I can remember, 20 to 25% off Games Workshop. Yet they were selling it for far below the recommended retail price. So if you would literally, I mean, a mate of mine, you remember and they'd have specials. You know, you'd never see this in a Games Workshop store. He bought 3 Tyranny Battle Forces back in the day. Each was $118.
Jesus.
Yeah. And he was telling me, you know, he would literally look for the specials. And this guy, I remember, I saw him last year, I think, and I showed him the Battle of Calth set because he stopped playing. He took one look at it and said, nah, not worth it, you know, because he hadn't bought any hobby stuff for years. So it was like, it's funny seeing this perspective years later where you've actually seen, where someone who hasn't seen the prices go takes one look at them and goes, yeah, fuck that, no way, mate, you know?
Well, yeah, it's hard to harp on about Games Workshop prices, but I know within my own community, that was the big thing that killed off most of the people that were into the game. There were people who, like, I started with a group of mates, probably 3 or 4 of us, consistently playing. I had an army that was like, 10 plastic Marines or something, and 10 Metal Scouts, a chaplain. Fuck, I don't even think I didn't buy a tank of my own, like a proper tank, until they released the Mark II Rhino in plastic. I never owned the original Land Raider or that kind of thing. But my group, like, we used to play really consistently. But being little kids, having fuck all money, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, we didn't have much money to spare. And so people got out of the hobby. It had nothing to do with not liking Games Workshop. They just said, I can't afford it. I can't like afford to play games of this. It's not holding my interest because I can't grow my force. I'm not content with what I've got. I'm constantly, jealous of other people. Was
Yes.
that something that you saw within your community? Because again, I'm
My
trying to
com-
contrast experiences here to see if like there is a common theme.
in our community, it was much. Well, I always use it as the exception, not the rule. See, what would happen is the guy's place we used actually had a massive house, and he had an old. It was a historic place, and he had a basement, and we would play our RPGs in there. We'd call it the dungeon. It wasn't much, but it was a basement. And in Australia, that's pretty rare. Anyway, we'd play our games in there. And I can remember I bought him a microwave. Someone gave me a microwave. I brought it down, and they blew it up on me. They decided to put foil in it and blew it up. I can remember that. But yeah, that's the sort of thing. And there was a lot of politics and backbiting in that group, unfortunately. But yeah, we would play upstairs in this little coach house, and sometimes we'd have painting sessions. Um, but there was one dude there, and he was probably, I'd say, the major cause of the breakup of our group. He was your classic neckbeard. It was like we had this comp roster going on there. He wanted to absolutely. He said, "Okay, I'm going to set up a comp roster with all the winners and losers." And I pretty much told him. I said, "I'm not interested. I just want to have fun. I don't want your comp rosters. I'm not into that comp shit. That's bullshit. I'm not interested." And he would record all the winnings and losses down there, and whenever I beat someone, he would like a, "Hey, you got beaten by Colin, ha ha ha." But yeah, anyway, so that was pretty much my experience with our Goldman group. It migrated into this guy Nick's house, and that was an even smaller space. That was just some guy's front room.
Right. So basically, no consistent area to play in, no local gaming club, no local gaming store, operating entirely. It's almost like, you know how you see like footage of Africans
Yes.
and they've like made technicals, like bolted a machine gun to the back of a ute, to the back of a truck, I guess Americans would say. And they're wearing like life jackets instead of body armor and other weird shit. It's like that. It's like you've cobbled together a gaming club around a system you don't know too well,
Mm-hmm.
and you're all just sort of figuring it out as you go. Is that
Yeah,
fair to say?
that's very fair. And yeah, and so how this ended for me was one of the guys happened to be in the Golden Gaming Association, and I discovered there was a whole wide range of stuff going in Goldman, and that was happening at up near the big Merino. There was regular events. There was this huge thing set up, so I got to see that.
Okay,
Uh,
so you got to step outside your small community on the edge of Goulburn and go into town proper and actually see a real club, correct?
yes, that's pretty much what happened. Guys from Canberra came. That's how I got to know some of the major event organisers, um, and gradually, and a few guys from down from Albury came. Some of the guys actually came to Goulburn. I don't know if they told you about that.
Oh, they would have. Problem
Yeah.
is, geez, we're going back over a long time with everyone I know. So, alright, so that's what it was like in your local area. Now, how, with your current community, with like, say, you're not really a 40k person anymore, is that fair to say?
No, yes, that's exactly true. When I discovered 30k, I completely ditched 40k. I wanted to focus on that. Um, focus myself completely on that, because if you're going to play 40 and 30k, you end up spreading yourself too thin, and just with it. And I don't like the 40k fluff. They've fucked it up. They've just gone and taken it and
Oh, I totally agree, mate. Totally agree. So, okay, so heresy is what's taken your eye.
yeah.
Is there a community for that where you are? And If not, how does that affect you, affect your gaming, affect your hobby, your motivation, all of that?
Um, is there a community for my 30k here in Goulburn? No. Is there one that I could get to? Yeah. The biggest problem I've seen is I don't have transport. I've got no way to get to these events. This is the point where I'd like to launch an appeal and say, look, anyone travelling through Goulburn to get to Sydney or Canberra, look, if you, I can ask, you know, would you be able to take me? I can offer you petrol money, whatever, um, because I simply can't get to the events, lack of transport. And yes, that affects me very much so because on social media, I really and the podcast and whatever, I really hear about all these great events. Now, my job, as I said, is to get myself to events and get myself out there. That's my number one goal at the moment. But when I don't get to events and I see other people at events and I see what's going on, I really want to be there. And it's like, oh, they're having such a great time. Oh, I wish I was there. Oh, that battle, that campaign looks so great. Oh, what a
So it's a big disappointment, really.
yeah. It's like I'm like your co-host Cat stuck out in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, but that's where he belongs. So, um, yeah, motivation wise, is it hard to be motivated for the hobby when you do have time to work on things? Is it hard without having a community there, or do you find that it doesn't really affect you because there's things like podcasts and videos and stuff like that?
It plays not having a community there plays it does have a huge effect on a very big effect because when I introduce myself online, um, written communication is not my strong point, and I'll say that right now. And yes, um, it's caused a bit of hostility against me in the community, I believe. But that is that's my problem. I've if I meet people in person and I actually go to game with them, you get to know people a lot better, and you actually have a support in place to keep you motivated into the hobby. But if you're not doing anything, and even though the podcasts, the videos are a great support, if you're not doing anything, the wheels are spinning, but you're not going anywhere. And for anyone who's just started 30k and wants to really get into it, my advice and my is to get to events when you can, because it opens up far more avenues, and you honestly get to and people can see who you are. Because online it's very, very difficult, and there's such a toxic atmosphere out there. A good example of this toxic atmosphere would be 40k for grown-ups.
Oh, one of our favourite pages on this channel.
I can tell you,
Sarcasm.
I can tell you, you can be the nicest, best, fairest guy, and open-hearted. You get on a 40k for grown-ups, you'll lose your enthusiasm for the hobby very quickly, because it's full of social justice warriors, whack gamers, and Games Workshop fanboy. And the fanboy part of it is absolutely. Sometimes I think they're all trolling. Sometimes I think there's a massive troll. Everyone's trolling on that page, um, and I just haven't gotten the joke yet. I mean, I watched a guy. You know, he simply goes on there, and my heart went out to him. He's gone in there and says, "I don't like Primal Space Marines. I don't like the fluff. I don't like this Gilliman shit. I don't want to do it. I don't like it." And you'd think in a normal group where people are adults, they would say, "Hey, yeah, it's cool. I agree with that. Yeah," or "I don't agree. Here's my reasons." No. It was he might have a few. He got full on ripped to shreds. Absolutely,
Kick the hornet's nest.
Yep, the fanboys came out like there were absolutely no mercy. And I mean, to give you another example, there are actually people there defending Games Workshop's prices. I mean, I
Oh,
mean,
mate, they're everywhere and they're fucking idiots. And hey, I would gladly knock some sense in them in real life. But yeah, it's hard in online communities because there's this big pack mentality,
Exactly.
where
And
people want to, either they're all for something or they're all against it. It's very hard to be someone in the middle. People would have noticed that a lot with like 8th edition is very much one of those things that you either like it or you don't like it. And it's hard to be in the middle. Me personally, I started out like right in the middle at the start of 8th edition, where I was like, okay, I want to see what it's like for 40k, but I don't want to touch my 30k because 30k is in a good place. And voicing those opinions on just even on YouTube, saying things like, oh, Primus Marines are a good idea, but maybe they should be reactionary to what Chaos has done as opposed to revolutionary. And people just lost their fucking shit at that. And it's like, I got video after video where the likes and dislikes are in like perfect fucking proportion to one another. And that to me means I'm doing my job. Because that's telling me that people are looking at that and half are going, yeah, I agree, and the other half are going, no, you're a fucking idiot. And that can be hard for, because like yours is a special case, and as I've done throughout the video, I'm going to try and break it down to how I see it. But in your case, it's like you're an outsider to this community. You try and engage with the community in the best way possible, which for you would be via like social media platforms, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So then when you go onto those, immediately you're greeted with this really, strong sentiments that may not be shared by you. Would you feel confident in trying to mingle with that group if they do not share your ideas? Or do you think that you'd be outcast?
It's hard to say because I've learnt to view my opinions as not being. I'm very selective on. Like, I'm in that many groups, it's not funny, but what I would say is depends on the group. With the 30k groups, I generally know that my beliefs are I'm in it. I'm not a whack gamer. I'll say that straight up. Winning and kicking dick is not a big priority. It's not even a priority for me. That's just silly. I mean, generally, I've found in the Australian community, people are very narrative driven, and because I love narrative, it seems most people in the Australian community love it too. And there's not that wackism there. I've seen one or two examples of it. Like, you get that everywhere. But to me, it's a comfortable place because generally, if you're a narrative gamer, the Oz 30k scene is it's great. It's a great place. But then the opposite side I've seen of that is that some people will suspect you of being whack. If they think you're whack, it doesn't matter. You're always going to have that suspicion on you, and that can be hurtful at times.
Yeah, I could understand that. Has that had an impact then on your attendance of events? Like, you finally go to an event, you're not, let's be honest here, not familiar with the rules. Nowhere near the extent of people who regularly host events or regularly attend the events. Does that create problems for you? I imagine it would create problems moving into that environment. And if it has created problems, how have you managed with that? And do you feel there's something you could have done different?
I'm glad you asked that. Actually, it's very. Like, I reviewed my performance at Act 2. I came. The first thing I did, as you know, I went and saw you. I got to the hotel, got to where I am, and I walked into the with you while you guys went off to go view CanCon. I walked into the event and I thought to myself, oh shit, I don't know anybody here. I feel like I'm a whack gamer at an Eye of Horus event, as lonely as a whack gamer at an Eye of Horus event, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that totally.
Yeah, and I walked in and I saw, I just looked at the armies and people would walk up to me and I'd run into a few people that I knew and I was just nervous. I didn't know what was going on and I just looking at all these people playing games and I even saw unpainted stuff there, which was a bit of a surprise because I'd worked myself into an absolute tizzy because I believe that if you're going to an event, you've got to have a painted army. It's like you take you're taking your girlfriend out for a date. You take her out to a very, very nice restaurant. You don't take her out for a special date and take her to, say, McDonald's, do you?
Well, it depends where you live, I guess.
Yeah, but
Like I said, I
I,
took the missus to the big Merino Macca's, mate.
oh, but yeah, so I'm in there and I was just standing around and I was feeling quite lonely, so I went and had a few beers and yeah, and then when the gaming came, we were playing Zone Metalis, and I'd notice these people come in and have a look around, and I'd recognise some of the faces, and yeah, so I'd play these games, and got to game a few people, and I was very anxious and very, very didn't know what the hell was going on, but I thought, okay, you've got a painted army, I've got an army list. I'll do the best I can, and yeah, there were interactions with different people, and overall, I did embarrass myself a few times, and if I acted weirdly, please forgive me because I was absolutely nervous as anything. And the funny thing is, I come back from Act Two, right? So I'm going there, and I put and big props out to Lejo from Loaded Dice Podcast and New South Wales Heresy. He was really great to me, very, very nice. And I got to we had a great chat with some of the other guys, and really a lot of guys went out of their way to be nice to me, and that was a plus. And he actually said something to me, and that stuck in my mind. He said, "Look, once you go to one of these events, you'll love it." And he was right. Going to the event was good. I got myself out there. I got myself into. I had fun while I was there. And was there things I could have done differently? Sure, but I made sure I got feedback from the event. And Andrew Hollis, who was the organizer, he's one of these guys. He worked 6 days straight, didn't sleep or anything to get this thing done, and he did a masterful job. And I didn't have a chance to talk to him because he looked that bloody, because he had the baby, he was stressed and everything like that. But props go to the organisers. I mean, there was so much great scenery there, and yeah, so got people confused. It was funny. Before I went and played the game. I was thinking to myself, what if I lose? And then there's like, hey, you always lose. That's not going to be an issue, mate. And if I win.
So, I mean, I think for a lot of people, going to an event for the first time, or not so much the first time, but an event with a lot of different people you don't know before, you're stepping outside your comfort zone.
Oh, very much so.
It's almost like a job interview. You're on edge because you've basically got one chance to impress.
Exactly. And I believed myself. Before I went up there to ACT2, I thought I wanted to do this because you got to put yourself out there. You got to go to these big events, and when you step out your comfort zone, it helps you grow. That's how I view it. You've got to continually grow, and you've got to push yourself. If you stay in your comfort zone, you will go. You'll stagnate. But if you push yourself, go out there, then you grow as a person. That's the way to do it. And the feedback I got after the event, now that was interesting. I wrote a few posts on the Oz 30 community page, and after the event, I noticed my Facebook friends list went down by like 10 or 15 people, and I thought, well, that's feedback, I guess, but what the hell did I do? I was like, when Homer got drunk at the party and he couldn't remember what he did and he had all these scenarios in his head?
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, I felt like that, and I thought, I didn't flip any tables over. I didn't do any whackinism. But again, feedback. You need to take that. I looked at the problem as being it was my problem, and I'm the one who is responsible for what goes on, and I've got to learn lessons from whatever I do. Because, some people, you might get that reaction, but that's just life in general.
Well, you're never going to please everyone.
That's exactly right.
You've just got to be who you are at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, um, and what I'm most proud of is what I'm very glad was the charity I was shown, and I got to see. But one of the best things for me was seeing people's armies, just looking at these armies, and seeing them up close and personal, and just saying, "Oh, that's a cool army" to someone, and because you can see the pictures, you can see the posts, but if you see the army firsthand and see that was probably for me the most glorious event for me in the at the event itself, and that was for me was fluffy. It was grand. It was glorious, and that was something that made the day for me.
That's good to hear. All right, well, thank you for all your kind words tonight, Colin, and thank you for taking the time out to enjoy me. I know we had a few technical hiccups
Oh yeah, tell me
trying to
about
get
it.
this together on the Australian internet. Um, so, for the audience, just so you sort of get the idea of what this episode was all about, the whole thing here is that not everyone has the luxury of a gaming group. Not everyone has the luxury of being close to somewhere where they can play. People don't always have the funds, the rules, the know-how, and it's hard for outsiders to come into a community. Of course, you never know what kind of caliber of person you're going to get, but I always think it's worth taking the time out to at least try and get to know someone when they come to an event. And let's be honest, I see this all the time at events. I've probably even been guilty of it in the past myself, but we get so caught up talking to our own social circle of people we know at events, and hey, I haven't seen you in ages, and talking smack with them, that we don't take the time out to go and talk to someone who we've never met before. And you've got to look around, because there are a lot of people who are basically loners at events. People who are just sitting over in the corner, and they might turn out to be really good guys. Like, there are so many friends I've made over the years, believe it or not, I do have friends, by just, like, having a game with someone, or going over and talking to someone. It turns out they're just an awesome dude, and they've got a good story to tell. We might end up on the beers in town that night, then we've got a story that we can tell together. And that's the things that really make this hobby. There's no quick and easy answer for people who are isolated. Again, you don't have the luxury of heading to events and things like that, but, it is what it is, and hopefully as a community, if there's anything I can sort of bring in this episode today, it's that it would be great if people, again, stepped out of their comfort zone and try and go to an event. Try and just do your best. And if people give you good feedback, and I mean, you can tell generally what's good feedback and what's not, learn from it. And for the people who are giving that feedback, don't treat people a certain way because they're not used to how you want them to act. There is a difference between people being unknowledgeable and people being a dick. Anyway, I'm Mac with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching the episode, and I'll see you all next time.